In this episode of Home Theater Geeks, I answer a question from PK, who wonders what's the best TV for sports. So stick around.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Hey there, Scott Wilkinson here, the Home Theater Geek. In this episode, I answer a listener question from PK, who writes, "One of the reasons I joined Club TWiT was to hear your show, Home Theater Geeks. I am glad to get your insights." Thanks, PK. Always glad to have a fan. He continues, "I'm 180 degrees out of phase with you. You watch no sports and tend to watch movies and other shows. That's correct. I watch no movies and about 95% sports. I have a 6-year-old 55-inch LG OLED that I like. The color seems good, and I watch in a basement that's pretty dark. In a year or so, I will be moving and there will be no basement in the new place. There are windows in the room where I'll be watching my sports, so there will be some ambient light. There are shutters on the windows, and there is no direct sunlight coming into these windows. The room is light, but not extremely so. Since I'm watching mostly sports, should I go with a quantum dot OLED? Should I stick with my LG OLED? Should I go with an LCD? I do notice some motion blur some of the time. Is this more a function of frame rate than anything else? I would like to remove that blur, and if it creates the soap opera effect, I can live with it. Is there a difference among QD OLED and regular OLED and LCD TVs that will reduce the motion blur? Lastly, can you recommend settings for the TV? I have picked sports mode, and I'm guessing that's the best one for me. I know you'd avoid that setting. Are there other settings I should consider? Well, thanks, PK. It's a great question, and I had to think about it a little bit because, as you say, I don't watch sports. It's just not that interesting to me, but I know it's interesting to an awful lot of people, so it's a very relevant question. Basically, if you like the LG OLED, and I'm not surprised you do, I'd stick with that technology. It's plenty bright enough for most rooms, and certainly such as the room you describe. I don't see any need to spend any extra money on QD OLED in your case. For sports, like movies, you want to go as big as possible. And depending on how far you sit from the screen, I'm guessing 55 inches is too small. Plus, sports is often a shared group experience. You know, you probably invite some friends over, especially like for the Super Bowl. You might have a big party. You want a big screen. And the more people you have over, the bigger screen you really want. So I'd get the biggest screen you can afford and that will fit in the space. QD OLED is only available up to 77 inches. Which is certainly bigger than what you got now. But I don't think it's necessary, as I said before. So I'd stick to OLED or LCD, which is often mislabeled as QLED. You've seen that, I'm sure. Really, all that refers to is the use of quantum dots and LEDs in the backlight of LCD TVs. It's a misnomer, and I'll say it as often as I can to let people know that it's a marketing ploy. It looks, visually, QLED looks an awful lot like OLED, and so people can easily confuse them. They're not the same. Price-wise and size-wise, the most bang for the buck will be found in LCD TVs or QLED TVs. OLEDs or OLEDs of the same size are more expensive. It's just a fact of nature at this point. On the other hand, OLED does not suffer from off-axis image degradation. Okay, so you're looking at the TV straight on, looks great. As you move off angle, an OLED TV will still look great. It'll look the same. An LCD TV or QLED will not. Its image will degrade. The contrast will go down. The colors will shift. And so if you have a big party of people watching the Super Bowl or some big game, the people off to the side are going to have a much less satisfying image. Just all there is to it. That's the nature of LCD TV. LCD TVs have really gone a long way in improving a lot of their shortcomings, but that's not one of them. I don't think there is a way to improve that. Some people have claimed to, but really it just doesn't happen. So in my opinion, it's worth spending more money and getting an OLED for that reason alone, really, especially for sports watchers. So I've posted here on TWiT before, talked about my list of LCD TV recommendations, well, all TV recommendations really for 2023. And the 2024 models haven't come out yet. So here it is again. We'll put it in the show notes so you can see. The QD OLEDs, as you mentioned, those are definitely the best TVs you can buy today. But I don't think they're necessary in your case. All OLEDs or OLEDs are highly recommended. I recommend them over LCD TVs, period. There's just no way to get around that. They're better, but they're more expensive. So you got to keep that in mind. So what this list is all of the lines, all of the product lines from the major manufacturers of LCD TVs. And all of them, the important point is they all have FALD, F-A-L-D backlights. FALD stands for full array local dimming, which means that the LEDs behind the screen are grouped into small zones. And those zones can be brightened and dimmed independently. So they're dimmed behind dark parts of the scene and they're brightened behind bright parts of the scene, and they improve contrast, and they really do make the picture better. Less expensive LCD models do not have FALD. They might have LEDs behind the screen, but they'll only brighten and dim as an entire unit. And some of them have LEDs along the edge of the LCD screen, and those are the least good of all, in my opinion. So that list has the model lines that I consider to be worth considering from the major manufacturers. And so it would be worth taking a look at that and seeing. Now, I've also come up with a graphic, a table, if you will, of some specific models and sizes and prices, because I want you to consider getting as large a TV as you can afford and will fit in your place. So here is here's my list that I will go over in some detail here. Another parameter to consider is refresh rate. TVs are available in 60 hertz, 120 hertz, sometimes 240 hertz, which is the rate at which they refresh the screen. I do not recommend 60 hertz for sports. For movies, it's fine. But for sports, I really recommend 120 hertz, which is definitely better, especially when you turn on frame interpolation, which I'll talk about in a minute. But all these TVs that I'm showing here are 120 hertz refresh rate, which is what you want. I start with what I consider the best options for you, and that would be the LG C3 and B3 models. I include the Sony A80L, which is their least expensive OLED, to show you how much more expensive Sony is compared to LG. It's like $700-800 more than the comparably sized LGs. The B3 does not come in an 83-inch version, but the others do. And I've listed the prices, the list prices, what I could find on the websites for 65-inch, 77-inch, and 83-inch. Those are the sizes that OLEDs come in. And as you can see, if you pull back up that chart real quick, The 65-inch C3, $1,600, 77, $2,300, and the 83 is $4,000. So that's getting up there. The B3 is a little bit less, $300 or $400 less. And so if you're trying to save some money, then those are the ones I would go for. In the LCD or QLED ranges, I've pulled out a couple from Hisense, a couple from Sony, and 3 from TCL. Though the LCD TVs come in 65, 75, and 85 inch. And some of them use what are called mini LEDs in their backlight. Those are just smaller LEDs. And so as a result, they can be grouped into smaller zones behind the screen, and they can more accurately brighten the bright parts and darken the dark parts of the scene with more precision. And it's a better thing, generally speaking. So I just wanted to let you know the Hisense U8K, for example, under $1,000 for a 65-inch. Compare that to an LG, even the B3, for $1,300. So, that's quite a bit better deal. The Hisense U7K, I couldn't find a price on the 65-inch for some reason. But the 75-inch is, again, just under $1,000. The Sonys, as you can see, are quite a bit more expensive. And then we get to the TCLs, and the QM8 is on the more expensive side. That's their top of the line. The R635 is quite a bit less expensive, and that's also a mini LED, interestingly. And the Q7 is it's slightly more expensive for 65, slightly less for 75, certainly for 83, and that uses standard size LEDs. So with all of that being said, I would recommend going with an LG OLED. You've already got one. It performs well, and it does. And I would do that mostly for off-axis picture quality. So that people off to the side can still see a good picture. If you can afford it, the 83 C3 would be awesome. Otherwise, I'd get a 77 C3 or B3. And if the budget is really, really tight, I'd probably go for the Hisense U8K or U7K. But the off-axis performance will suffer. So keep that in mind. Now, regarding the settings, you asked me about settings. I would still recommend the cinema or movie picture mode. You chose the sports mode, but the cinema or movie modes are the most accurate. Now, as far as I know, sports broadcasts are still shot and produced using the same criteria as movies and TV shows. And so you want to see them as the producers saw them on their monitors as they were producing the show. And to do that, you need cinema or movie mode. And it's going to be better than sports mode, because sports mode, as far as I know, in most cases, it will be too bright, too blue, and too vivid. You want grass to look like grass, not like neon. Regarding motion blur, if you do select cinema mode or movie mode or filmmaker mode, frame interpolation will be turned off. And to reduce motion blur, you do want to turn that on. Some people object to it because of, as you mentioned, the soap opera effect. But if that's not going to bother you, and for watching sports, I think it would be better to turn frame interpolation on. So, and the soap opera effect probably won't be as bad as it is for movies, because sports are shot on video anyway. They're shot at video frame rates of 30 frames per second, typically. So if you interpolate those frames, if you insert synthesized frames between them, it's not going to be as bad of soap opera effect as it is for movies, which are at 24 frames per second. In LG TVs, the frame interpolation function is called true motion, TRUMOTION. So I would turn that on in cinema mode, or movie mode, whatever it's called. I forget in the LG. And that will sharpen up motion greatly, which is good for sports. Give you a little soap opera effect, but if you can live with that, it's going to be a better picture. So there you go. I hope I helped. Now, if you have a question, please send it on to htg@twit.tv. I love answering listener questions. I'd be happy to answer yours on one of the upcoming shows. And as always, we thank you for your support of the TWiT network with your membership in Club TWiT, which gives you access to all the TWiT shows, including this one, Home Theater Geeks. It also lets you come into the Discord channel, and you can watch us make the show live. So I do hope you will join us. Until next time, geek out.